let's get this kicked off with our pop culture leaders. And one of, I suppose he's been a very social leader or leader in for social reasons and helping people out and always had a very social cause to what he does. Bono. You know, obviously there's lots of background about U2 and everything like that. I was actually really surprised to find out the Christian, let's say, undertones to a lot of the things that they did. But there was an interview in the New York Times recently where Bono was interviewed, and obviously he's known for a lot of his charitable works and wanting to make the world a better place, I suppose. And it was very interesting that that he actually admitted that in his, let's say, in his maturity in years, he's now had a change of perspective. And so our theme for this week is actually how leaders change. And because leaders can change in all different ways, and there's lots of different things that can be affected in that. And so Bono actually changed his perspective on how he believed the world could be helped, because he believed that, well, if you just redistribute resources, then there's enough money in the world to be able to feed everyone. There's enough support and resources in the world to be able to help everyone. And if we just redistribute it, then the world would be in a better place. Then he went on to say that he's realized over time that the key to helping people is not actually redistributing. Oh, there's a bit of a tongue tie. I'll get there. Redistributing resources, but he said it was commerce. That's right, entrepreneurial commerce, and that's a topic that I'm really keen on. Obviously, I too believe that one of the secrets to being able to help an area or a community or even a nation is entrepreneurialism. People being creative and solving problems, and there being a transfer of value amongst people, and that's what I believe, that there's great advantages. But it's really interesting, Dr. Rod, that someone like Bono would go from a very socialist point of view of like, well, let's just, if everyone just had equal money, like he's gone from that to now going, well, actually, commerce, and which obviously is capitalism. He then goes on to talk about globalism, which actually his view of globalism is a little bit skewed. But what's your take on number one, his shift in perspective, and number two, the result in his answer?
Well, first, good on him for
Yes.
changing his mind when the facts suggested that he should. And of course, he justifies his shift in thinking on the grounds that he's visited a lot of countries, particularly in Africa, and he's actually seen how commerce can lift people out of poverty. So, it takes a lot of courage, because, of course, he was seen as something of a leader in the whole, that whole area of thinking that says the best way to deal with poverty is to simply take something off the wealthy and just simply hand it over. In other words, to redistribute wealth. In fact, if you have a look at history, redistributing wealth when it has actually happened has actually led to poverty.
Yes.
Not the other way around. And, there's very compelling evidence now, which is published by the World Bank. Anybody can go and look at the data, readily available on the internet. If we go back to about the beginning of the 21st century, 44% of the world's population was living below what we call absolute poverty. It's defined at present as $2.15 US dollars. That's US dollars per day. So at the turn of the century, around about 44% of the world's population were living dreadfully poor, dreadfully poor. It's now down to around 8%. And the big shift that's been going on in the world is that governments have been a little bit less inclined to interfere with commerce. In other words, a lot of governments have kind of smoothed the pathway for entrepreneurship and for business. And what it's done, it's actually created opportunity, it's created employment, it's created income, and it has lifted people out of poverty. Now, that's not to say that governments should just sit back and do nothing. We do need to make sure that people are well educated and that people are healthy as well, and that people are safe and secure. So governments have major roles to play in the area of, say, national security and also security within their borders. In other words, they've got to look after security, and they've got to ensure that private property rights are well defined and are defended.
Yeah.
And as long as you've got a pretty good education system and people have got access to health services, that means they can work. And when the jobs are available, they do work. And look, it's absolutely biblically based, because God created us to work. People need opportunities to work. And when they do, wealth is created and people are simply lifted out of poverty. And we've actually witnessed that over the last, in fact, it goes back to about 1990, these changes started taking place. And in a country like China, it goes back even further than that to the middle 1970s. And literally billions of people have been lifted out of poverty. So good on Bono for making the shift when he confronted a reality that was different to what he had believed. He had the courage to change his point of view.
So on that, I mean, obviously we're talking to leaders, and what would you say to a leader that has had a particular perspective and has stood quite firm on that perspective, but found over time that maybe their perspective was misinformed, or maybe just inaccurate, or whatever, or maybe I don't want people to think that just because you change your mind, you were wrong in the first place. Maybe there's new data that's come out. Maybe there's new information that's available. Maybe there's circumstances that has changed. But how do we as leaders know, first of all, when to change, when to be open to new information? Because yes, we need to stand firm. How do we know what the difference is between good information that can change our beliefs and not misinformation that's going to lead us off track?
That's a difficult one, because I think it's becoming harder and harder to rely on sources of information. We do have to be very careful about believing anything we see in social media. So we have to make a judgment about whether the people who are presenting information are doing so from a position of integrity. So we've really got to make a judgment about that. I think we have to look at our own experience. We have to look at the experience of others. We have to be prepared to sift through a lot of data, and also to read very widely. And for someone like myself, who's got a professional background in economics and management, I've got a kind of natural inclination to read a lot of research. Also, I am aware that just about every research paper published, particularly in economics, it will be coloured by the particular worldview of the authors.
Yeah.
One reason for that is you've got to make some assumptions to simplify the way in which we understand the workings of the world. So you've really got to apply a lot of wisdom, a lot of judgment. But in an area such as this, how do we release people from poverty? The evidence has been mounting for decades now that we cannot do it by transferring money or transferring wealth. This idea goes all the way back to the 1960s. The 1960s was declared by the United Nations as the decade of development. And the primary means of development was to transfer resources financial resources in particular from the richer countries to the poorer countries. And guess what? It didn't work. And people started writing in about the mid-1960s from then on saying, look, this approach to lifting people out of poverty just isn't working.
Yeah.
And the evidence is cumulative, I guess, over a long period of time. And look, we have to understand too that in a lot of the poorer countries, the education system doesn't work very well because it's run by incompetent and often dishonest, corrupt governments. They don't pay often and they don't pay well. Teacher absentee rates in many countries are 60% or higher. So if a child actually goes to school, they might not have a teacher in any case. And honestly, there has been serious research done that suggests that private enterprise, small profit-oriented companies providing education actually works a lot better in these countries than anything the government provides. Similarly, in the health area. So, private enterprise, I believe, was God's idea.
Yeah.
It goes all the way back to Genesis. It's all the way through the Bible. And yes, the benefits of private enterprise are undermined and marred by sinful humanity. And that, of course, is the case in every area.
Yeah, but I see that as more of a, the old adage of a box of matches is neither good nor bad. It can be used to light a fire, to cook a meal and keep you warm, or it can be used to burn a house down. It's that same sort of thing, I believe that, yes, people have misused commerce, but I believe real entrepreneurialism is the key that will save communities because number one, I believe that entrepreneurialism is just about solving a problem. That's all it is. It's going and solving a problem.
That's right. It's finding a new way of solving a problem. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so every person should be looking for a problem that they believe God's called them to fix and go and find a solution for that. When there's a solution, there will be an exchange of value. Now, that may be money, that may be I'm giving you a pump and you're going to give me water, right? Like there's going to be an exchange of value or whatever it is. And so, yeah, and that's why I love to see the charities that are that focus on micro giving for businesses. Microfinance, that's it. Yeah, microfinance, because there's so many studies that's shown that by giving someone purpose, by giving someone something to do in the day and then value to create, well, I mean, it's biblical because work is worship, right? Like biblical, it's biblical that God has called us to work and create things. We're created in his likeness and he's a creator God and we are creator beings as well. We need to create and you see someone find purpose in creating something, in working, and not only does it then provide value for their family, it then makes their mood better. They get better fulfillment. Their attitude changes towards things, and that you have become more aspirational and more positive towards things. And that in and of itself can become almost contagious. That as people are bringing up, when a business improves, they hire people. And they give other people work and they purchase supplies. So they give suppliers business and also they're creating value for the community, whether it may be food or clothes or repairs to equipment or whatever. They're providing value. And so many people benefit from commerce. So yeah, I truly believe that look, I know lots of you want to be able to help. I know lots of you want to be able to contribute to the world. Don't give. See how you can go and support a business. See how you can go and support someone to start a business. See how you can support someone like encourage people to be entrepreneurial, get their creative juices flowing and find a problem to solve. And
Definitely.
And so, Dr. Rod, back on the leadership thing, when we change our views, how would you suggest we approach that? That, okay, we've done the research, we've found it out. Do we admit that we're wrong? Do we how do we do it in a way that doesn't discredit us and also doesn't bag out anyone obviously that still thinks the other way? Because we need to be careful and conscious of that.
Yeah.
So
look, this is all part of our integrity as leaders. If we do, maybe we don't need to say, look, I was wrong on that. But I think we should be honest enough to say, look, my perspective has changed, my view has changed, I've come to a different conclusion. Sure, you can say, yep, I was wrong if you want. I've been wrong about plenty of things. And I am willing to change my mind or my perspective in the light of evidence, and in particular in the light of my ever increasing understanding of the Word of God. And that comes through listening to a lot of teachers, reading what a lot of people have written, and weighing that up against everything else that I've accumulated by way of knowledge and understanding over a period of time. And what it really means is a good leader is a lifelong learner.
That's really
committed
good.
to learning. And learning is about looking at new evidence, considering new perspectives, and weighing that up against, the accumulated knowledge and understanding that you have, and asking yourself the question, do I need to make a shift in my thinking? And, I can understand Bono. I know Michael Novak, a very well-known Catholic theologian, was quite socialist in his younger days, but I think it was the last book he published before he died. It was titled Social Justice is Not What You Think It Is.
Mm.
He had a co-author, but, in that book, he traced his change in perspective. And his perspective changed for two reasons. One, observation, just like Bono, but also a deepening understanding and appreciation of what the Word of God had to say about how we are to deal with poverty.
Yeah.
And we've spoken before about the laws of gleaning in the Old Testament. There was really no social welfare. You could argue that the so-called tithe of the third year was a social welfare provision, and there was a social welfare element in the tithe as well. But the primary mechanism for delivering assistance to those who, for whatever reason, were unable to provide for themselves, it was actually gleaning. And gleaning provided people with the dignity of work.
Yeah, that's
because
good.
Gleaning meant work, and it was work that enabled them to sustain their own lives, essentially. So, look, these issues are always very difficult issues. But if we want to be leaders of integrity, we've got to be prepared to confront new experiences, new evidence, new perspectives, and weigh them up against our current position and ask ourselves the question, do we need to make a shift?
Yeah, that's good. I like what you said about that he wrote about his journey or his change in thought process in a book, because I think that it's actually really important for us. Like, one thing, when we change our mind on something or change our view on something, we need to understand that we've gone through a journey ourselves. We've gone through a journey of thought processes. We've read something, we've heard someone say something, we've had an encounter, we've had a revelation. Like, we've gone on this journey. We can't expect that just because we've made a decision around something that now our followers will automatically change their view on that, right? We can't just say, well, I've changed my view and you should change your view too. No, we need to understand that they too need to go through their journey. And so it's really important when you're sharing about your change in viewpoint or change in worldview or change in perspective on something, share your journey in obviously a brief moment. You don't share the full thing, but kind of hit some of the key, I suppose, moments that I like to call them the defining moments that caused you to change your perspective, caused you to prick your ears up and go, maybe I'll think a little bit more about that. Because if you're able to share about those thought processes or those emotions during that time, maybe that might trigger something in the other person for them to be able to go along that journey as well, so that when they go home and think about it, they don't have to take the full journey that you did. You can accelerate them through that journey. So look, as leaders, it's okay to change your view and perspective. It's okay. But make sure that make sure we're researching, make sure that we're taking our knowledge and our experience into hand, using wisdom. And then when it is time, admit that, hey, we've changed our perspective, and share that journey along the way. And also, as the side note, if you're wanting to help people, business, commerce is the way. So help someone be entrepreneurial if you can. That's a little bit of a side note. Hi, you just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership Podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Put a comment below to share your thoughts on what we discussed. And hey, if you'd like to watch the full episode, click the link and you can see the full episode and consider subscribing to our channel. It would mean a lot to us.